With loads of business advice flooding the industry, it has never been harder to see the path to success. And you can't take action if you don't have clarity. Get clear on the actionable tips and strategies that will help to scale your business here on Masters in Clarity, the podcast that brings you clarity around messaging, business growth, digital marketing, personal development, and the business owner's journey to success. Let's join our guide, the master of turning clarity into action and lasting impact, Dolores Hirschmann.
I am so excited about my next guest. Jon Tota is an edtech entrepreneur, digital media innovator, and podcast host of the Learning Life show. He helps clients with their online course strategy, producing innovative digital media, and creating digital avatars of thought leaders, influencers, and personalities. You do not want to miss this amazing conversation with Jon. So Jon, thank you so much for taking time to connect. And I know in the pre-recording, we were just catching up and checking in because we've known each other for a few years now, but we still have a missing date of skiing together.
I know. Well, it's great to be here with you, Dolores. And I know we've got to do it in person soon. And hopefully it'll be on the slopes.
Awesome. So, at the Masters in Clarity journey, Masters in Clarity podcast, we are all about understanding the clarity or confusing journey that each one of us took to get to where we are. So what was that? What was the journey that brought you here, and how much clarity or confusion did you experience in the journey?
Yeah, so I guess it's probably a lot of a combination of the both, right? Like everybody. And, so as you know a little bit from my background, I started out of college, back in the mid 90s as a screenwriter. And I failed as a screenwriter. I wrote a bunch of scripts. I got a bunch optioned, but nothing ever got produced. And I ended up going to Wall Street, and that's where my family had always worked. And I got into technology. And I really didn't know. I wasn't trained to do any network technology or anything. So I took the opportunity to learn something I didn't know that obviously I was interested in. And one thing led to another. I took a job with a small technology consulting firm. And then in 2002, I partnered with a couple of the guys from that consulting company to start Edulance, which was my first company. Really at the time, in 2002, it was before YouTube. People weren't doing a lot of online video. And our idea was to develop a platform for online video specifically for training. And we were in the financial services space. So we started that. And so, yes, a lot of confusion doing something before the market was ready, and something that we had never been software developers. And so, that company ran for 18 years, and we learned a lot because online video and the internet advanced a ton over that period of time. And we had to evolve our platform and our offering. And I think, to your point, there were probably a lot of moments where we were very confused, and then times when we had those moments of clarity, and we pivoted the business, and probably at least 3 or 4 times. And I think, we ultimately, that company was acquired in 2020. And so it was, it was a big success, for all of us, and it was a good exit. But yeah, I always say if we knew more clearly what we were doing, we might've gotten to an exit about 7 or 8 years sooner, right? Yeah.
And let me unpack a little bit what you just said, because part of the purpose of this podcast is to really shed light into the journey of many of us entrepreneurs who have done multiple businesses or just one business, but that, there's a myth about our linear path and our capacity to know what we're doing at all times. And every time I talk to my guests, it's like, no, none of it was totally linear nor clear. And I think there's a common through line to many of my guests, which is we're all visionaries. And you just said it. It's like, we knew what we were doing in 2002, but there was nobody else that knew what we were doing or seeing what we were seeing. And so how do you handle an idea and a vision that is really clear, and the confusion comes with the disconnect with the market, because your vision is here, but the market is here. I mean, any innovation is about thinking and imagining something that doesn't exist. And the risk and the challenge for any visionary is how long do I either have to wait, or how much do I have to work the market up to educate to be able to, for my vision that is so clear, to match a market that is not ready.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because it's something that as entrepreneurs, I think we all struggle with, is that if you are really passionate about your idea and you feel like it can change your industry, change the world, it should be something that no one else is doing, right? And if no one else is doing it, it's great for you personally. It feels really good because you're an innovator, but then the reality hits you and it's like, oh, well, no one's ever had a budget for this. They've never paid for this before.
Or they don't even understand what I say.
Yeah. And I think that aspect of kind of really believing in yourself, your vision, following that passion, where like for us, streaming video didn't work very well in 2002. Like every presentation, every presentation would rebuffer, and there was always someone there with CD-ROMs and DVDs saying, no, you're crazy, it'll never work. And I think you do have to have conviction, but it is kind of taking that leap of faith a little bit on your instincts, because if you were very practical, in a lot of these cases, if you're in, at least like in my world where you're in the technology space, if you start thinking practically, you'd say, oh yeah, this is crazy, it's never going to work. And I do think that having good partners, and a lot of people say this with technology companies, that you should always find a good co-founder, because I think that helps a lot, to have someone else who believes the same vision you do. And that helps. Yeah,
I love that. And have that complementary energy so that you can stick with the vision, even when you're confused why the demand is not there, because I think that's where the confusion comes. So you've evolved, you've exited that business, and what's happening now? Let's talk about your work right now, 2021.
Yeah. So,
and what problem do you solve?
Yeah. So, again, I'm addicted to technology solutions. So I said that I wanted to get back to my roots, which, as a aspiring screenwriter back when I got out of college, I always wanted to create original content. And then, we made a good living producing content for our customers to put into our platform. So ultimately, our product was called Knowledge Link, and it was a video-based learning management system, and primarily used in financial services, but with a lot of other people as well. And what everybody needed was content. And so what we always said is, part of our business was always developing the content that people needed, because it was a necessary evil. But it was also something I loved. I love production. I always wanted to create content, but I wanted to create feature-length films, not necessarily corporate communications and training videos, but I love the creative outlet. And so when we closed on the acquisition of Edulance, it was in the spring of 2020, which was really right at the start of the pandemic, when everything was getting shut down. And Syntax in Motion, which is my new company here in Burlington, Vermont, we started up as a production company to produce content for thought leaders, experts, training companies. We don't produce commercials. We don't do advertising content. Really what we focused on is producing knowledge products. Problem was, at the start of the pandemic, we realized very quickly that no one could come into a studio, no one could do video, but audio was very available to everyone. And so today, fast forward, year and a half or so later, we've just opened up our full studio here in Burlington. Now people are able to come back in the studio, and we're producing a lot of interactive video, kind of choose your own ending content. But also we do a ton with audio, and we're really interested in how you can innovate with audio as a learning tool. I think I'm a big fan of audiobooks and podcasts, and so we want to help people do as much as they can with all the different media formats now that are out there. Yeah, and there's so many. I was telling you about this work I'm doing with the tour with Pete and I'm the translation. We were talking with John Lee Dumas yesterday from Entrepreneurs on Fire. He was one of the guests. And he's done amazing with podcasts. So, there's so many mediums. And one of the things I've learned, and this is more for the work you do with your clients, is that it's more about the
the getting that professional content out and being consistent with it
Mhm.
than having all of the different contents built and produced at the same time. Like it really doesn't matter which one, as long as you stick with it and you do it well, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I know someone had helped me with this a long time ago because I launched my podcast show back in 2017, and I had tried. We had done YouTube video series over the years. We'd launch them all the time because I kind of had that passion for video, and I would keep having starts and stops with a blog because I thought of myself as a writer, and then I realized that as soon as I started recording the podcast, that was the perfect medium for me. It was the one thing I could do consistently. Once my team saw me doing it, they said back in 2018, let's turn it into a weekly show and do it consistently because it'll work if we just stick to the schedule and do it. And starting then, we've released, with a couple breaks, throughout the year, weekly episode every week. Since 2018, we just have recorded, I think, about 180 episodes now. And I love it. I think it's like to your point, I found the media format that worked for me. And, it may not be the right one for everyone, but it's when you do lock in on that, that's the thing. You just kind of narrow in and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be really focused to do the best content possible in that format. And I don't have to do, 5 or 6 different platforms. Yeah.
And so if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to hear it from Jon. If you're listening to this, Jon is saying permission to find one medium, be consistent and do it well, versus this should that we're all under, in which we need to do everything. And so I thank you, Jon, because this part of the podcast is deconstructing the myth around digital marketing or online businesses where we have to do so much to succeed. And really the game is professional content in a consistent way, but do it well, do one and stay on it. Which is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's easy. Sometimes you look at competitors or peers and you see their great YouTube channel, or you see the things they're putting out on Instagram. And the first instinct is to say to your team, let's go start doing that. We need to do that too. Right. And then you just have a lot of decent content in different places. Whereas when you find the thing that you're so passionate about, because that media format really works for you, and like to your point, you'll do it consistently. You don't mind doing it on a regular basis. It gets you, like for me, recording a podcast episode is what I come out of the studio and I'm like so charged up because I'm like, I love doing those. They're great.
Yeah. And just curious, most of them, I've been a guest to your podcast, so I know you have guests. Are they all guests, or do you have a mix of you alone and guests?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I personally, on my show, it's interview format. So I always interview guests. We played with the idea where I would do some more episodes, work in some episodes where it's just original content. But instead, what we've done is we've launched multiple shows now. So we have a scripted fiction show where which is great because we buy screenplays from up and coming writers and then we produce them as audio fiction. And
love that.
Yeah, it's so much fun too, because you get these we only do 3 episode stories. So it's 3 acts, beginning, middle, end. And it's great because we will only buy a script from someone who hasn't been produced yet. So that this is a way, it's very cost effective, but we hire professional voiceover talent and they get to see their story come to life, which is great. And it's fun.
And
it
becomes part of their portfolio.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And you're helping them out and you're producing great content.
Yeah. And for our team, it gives them another creative outlet because interview shows are fine. But for someone who, like my head of production does the sound engineering, he loves doing a scripted fiction show. It's a lot more work, but he designs the soundscape and all the effects and the voice, they get to work with voice actors. So it's for me, I know that I can I'm perfectly fine financing the production of fiction, audio fiction, video fiction, feature length film.
Other story.
Different game, different ball game.
whole other story. Love that. So what is the impact ultimately? We are entrepreneurs, we have financially abundant companies, but most of us are not, obviously we like the success and the financial success, but we could have that success working for someone ultimately at some point. There's a little bit of wanting impact, at least for me. Is that true for you as well? And what is that? What does that look like? What does impact look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because, I think we've all had those moments. I came up in a Wall Street family. So all of my siblings went and worked on Wall Street. And my brother now, I look at him, I think, you could make a lot of money on Wall Street and you could do it in a lot of different ways. And I always hear people now, like when I mentor young up and coming entrepreneurs, like be clear, because there's easier ways to make good money than starting your own business, right?
There is.
You see in the news are the huge successes. That's like the small
survivors.
percentage. Yeah, right. But if you are passionate about it and you want to make an impact, you want to make change. I also think for me, this overwhelming focus for me, or the core value for me, has always been freedom. Like early on, I knew I didn't want to have to be told what to do. I would accept all the risk that went along with it, and the times when you don't make much money and you got to figure out ways to make ends meet. But because if you have no ceiling on you, there's no one telling you that you can only go so far. You have that freedom, and also to pivot and go in different directions. Say, oh, I can make a bigger impact in a different way, and I don't have to get permission. I can just do that. And so I think having that freedom, both in the way you run your business and hopefully financial freedom, if it all works, but also quality of life. Like for me to be able to do what we do in Burlington, Vermont, is a quality of life thing, because I'm near all of the things I like to do. And that would be hard if I needed to find a good paying job here. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to move back into the city where you come from. So what are you most excited in the next 12 months?
So for us, one of the things we've done now, and this goes back to the start of the pandemic, when we started, figuring how we were going to pivot and innovate using audio only, because our clients couldn't come into the studio. So we started working with little animated characters that you could match up an MP3 file. So a client would record an audio track, and then we'd match them up with a little avatar, the cartoon avatar that we created to look like them. And it was okay. And it worked for some people in some cases. But then we started working with technology where it's essentially synthetic media. So everyone talks about deep fakes, on social media and things like that. But there is this very small corner of the industry that's starting to grow, where synthetic media for business purposes is really becoming a real thing. And so we really outfitted our studio here to produce AI avatars for thought leaders, personalities, influencers.
So it's an avatar that moves and talks like me.
Yes. And what's fascinating is that someone who is a professional speaker and is on the road half the year normally, they come into the studio for 3 or 4 hours with us. We synthesize their voice. We shoot a video footage of them. And then in about 2 weeks, we turn that video footage into an avatar that looks exactly like you, and the voice file speaks just like you. And then you can just text or email scripts to us and have video. So consistency, like you said, can be achieved without you having to go in front of the camera all the time.
So let me just make sure I get this straight. So it looks like me, not in cartoon way, but it looks like me, like
real life,
like the lady in the airport that says, put your bags in the carousel, and it's like like Star Wars.
Yes, and exactly. And you see it in like big studio films. They've been doing this for a little while. You see, the Tom Cruise deep fakes that the guy produced that we were out on social media. But this is it's getting mainstream, where someone like you could come into our studio in half a day, and then within weeks, you have an avatar that looks and sounds just like you, and you can text in scripts and be shooting content out on a consistent basis.
And you can change my outfit?
We can't change outfits yet, but
not yet.
But you can.
But I can't gain weight.
Right, you are frozen in time.
So in 10 years I look like this.
I know. It's the dream we've all wanted. My headshot I use is still 10 years old for everything. So until people see me in video, they go, "Oh, that guy's old now." That's right.
I love this. Maybe we should talk offline.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm
No,
excited
but for
about
women, the hair and makeup is a problem.
So it's so funny you say that, because we shot 3 avatars with women professional speakers last week. And that was the one thing that came up. We interviewed them afterwards, like why, because a lot of this is figuring out, why would you want an avatar? What will you use it for? What's the business case? And they all said the same thing, that looking like this, looking camera ready with makeup and hair, it's a pain to do. So we do it once. We have the makeup artist, the hairstylists come in, they make them look perfect on camera for that one shoot, and then you don't have to worry about it every time.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, I can tell I didn't do much production today, but thank God for Zoom filters. But look, I even have the filter of lipstick. I'm really, and I have my tricks. Well, I'm very excited about what you're doing, and the concept of, I mean, our industry is going into that, into the AI integration, and into really, we have gone to the point where thought leaders, in order to succeed, need to produce content at such speed that is almost not humanly possible. And so, I mean, especially video content. And so if you can think it, you can write it, you can create a video in the same lapse of time that is brilliant and amazing. And I'm going to be sending you some people your way. So what book, podcast, or series, we've been watching a lot of documentaries in Netflix and stuff, what should we all check out? What must we consume that is worth our time?
So I love this book, Anything You Want, by Derek Sivers. And I always mention this because a lot of people haven't heard of Derek Sivers. He's got amazing TED Talks out there if you search him online, but he's also a very prolific writer, and he writes in a very approachable way, easy to digest. But he's a great entrepreneur. He's had a ton of success. And just, it's one of those books that I always say to any entrepreneur, it's, a lot of these books you read, and then as you get into it, you go, oh, those are all really hard things for me to be able to accomplish myself. And he kind of breaks it down into these easy, quick things. And so I love that. I have to say, Game Changers documentary, I think it's on Netflix. My wife would insist that I mention that because she's a vegan, totally plant-based. And she is gradually converting our whole family over to being plant-based by recommending Game Changers to everyone. And it is fascinating when you watch that documentary, the kind of the way your body processes foods, and how, how beneficial being plant-based is. And even if, like, for me, I'm not there yet, but I eat far more plants and fruits and vegetables than I ever did before. So yeah, Game Changers is super cool. It's a very interesting one.
Awesome. We'll check it out. Well, thank you so much, Jon, for joining us today and for telling us your story and your vision. Any parting thoughts that you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think, in the theme of your show and some of the episodes that I've listened to, which I've really enjoyed, I think this topic of kind of looking at these moments of confusion, or when there's zero clarity, and trying to work through them and turn those into breakthrough moments that become clarity. I think for me, there's these 3 distinct moments in our business history that we were probably at the start of it, the most confused and the most off track that we were. And the breakthrough pivot that we made at that moment led to the things that came after that. And I think for anybody listening, rather than looking at those big blocks, those big moments of confusion as an obstacle, think of them as an opportunity and a point of pivot for your business. And that, I think, for a lot of people, it can also help you work through it in a more positive way than to look at the challenge.
I love that. And the key word there is, what emotion are you putting into your confusion? If you keep a positive emotion, then that confusion is your launch pad. If you put a negative emotion and you don't manage your self-talk, which is our responsibility, then that confusion might just be that confusion without an opportunity. So I think I love that you mentioned that, watch the energy the emotion that you're bringing into that moment of confusion, because I agree with you. It is from the darkness and some dark moments that we find the light of our next opportunity or a next level of growth. But we just have to protect ourselves and be aware of how we are experiencing it, and when we're losing perspective and we're sinking into it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great advice. And yeah, so thank
So,
you for
Mr.
having
Jon,
me.
where can people find you?
So LinkedIn, obviously Jon Tota on LinkedIn. The Learning Life Show, that's my podcast show. Everything I do, I put into that show. So it's thelearninglifeshow.com is the website. You can learn more about me there and listen to some of the great episodes. And it's on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, so wherever you get your podcasts. And Learning Life, wherever you find us, that's the best way to find out a lot about me.
Awesome. So learninglife.com, and we're going to put all in the show notes anyway. Well, thank you, Jon, for taking time to chat with us and to connect. And let's make a day to go skiing.
Absolutely. That'll be fun. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay. I just had an amazing conversation with Jon Tota. Not only will we touch on his experience and his career in online learning and how he just exited from his business very successfully a year ago, but he's now in a project where he's combining AI, artificial intelligence, and video production. And he showed me some examples. Here's what it is that we talked about. It's amazing. Basically, in his studio in Burlington, Vermont, he's able to record you as a thought leader. And then using artificial intelligence, AI, he can produce future videos from just a script that you send them. They synthesize your voice, they synthesize your image and your movement. This is not like a comic, like animation of you. Absolutely not. This is your live version powered by AI. And I'm just thinking of maybe I'll just do it so that I can create consistent content with professional video in a very, very fast pace. So you do not want to miss my conversation with Jon and see what the future brings for us content creators.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Masters in Clarity. If you loved today's show, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Share this episode with 2 people in your world, and as a gift, go to mastersinclarity.com/free to download free Clarity resources. Join your host, Dolores Hirschmann, next time to continue forging a clear path to your impactful success.